Will yours stand the test of time?
Yeah, that's a great one. Obviously, it's referencing the relationships that we have, and we've been talking about The Good Life. Obviously, the book that shares the secret to that success and having happiness and creating the happiness we want in our lives with our teens, and it's relationships. Will our relationships stand the test of time?
I'm totally distracted right now. I feel bad because you would think that our relationship, our working relationship, our friend relationship, you would think that I was paying attention to you. I was actually thinking about the phone bowl.
From last episode?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking about the
Steve,
phone bowl.
if you want our relationship to stand the test of time. What were you thinking about?
No, but really, I mean, do you care if I interject here?
No, I think we had a great response on that episode, and I think there's some good stuff to continue to build on.
I do. I think I do as well. I think mealtime, we made the case for mealtime. I think besides, one thing we didn't mention is I think more vegetables would probably be eaten if there was more family mealtime. Think about it. If you eat alone, you tend to go
into the health benefits of eating together, because when you sit down and eat together, the odds are you're probably eating healthier.
I guarantee you there's got to be some nerdy research on that, but that's a whole other tangent.
Podcast.
But no, I have a question for you as we're trying to reclaim our kids, trying to get their attention, trying to give them our attention, trying to improve these relationships. And let's say you decide to go with the phone basket or the phone bowl during mealtime. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to put their phones in there and you're going to set it aside and you're going to talk and eat. What if you have a reluctant teenager?
Great question.
I want you to bust out some psychology.
Oh, it again always goes back to the relationship. Everything's an opportunity to build a relationship. And if they give you some pushback, don't look at it as a war. When they give you some pushback on things like this, don't look at it as a battle. Look at it as an opportunity to build a connection. And like we talked about how, that approach is, hey, this is what I'm doing. And as long as I'm putting my bowl in there, it might start with just, me setting the example and doing it. But one of the funnier things that I think, and this is, I've read this in at least one book, and I can't quote you chapter and verse off the top of my head, but the concept of
read a lot of books.
I do read a lot of books. And they, you can see that
they melt together.
They very much melt together. But the idea is a little bit of bribery is actually not a bad thing. And getting them to, even it might have to start like, look, just kick your phone in here while we're eating every day for a month, and I'll give you $20 or $50, or we'll go do something together as a family. Whatever that would look like for your family, I don't know. But it's that idea of getting them to do something that is going to be beneficial for them. Because like I said, when I've talked to my classes about this, to a person in those classes, those kids know they spend too much time on their phones. And kids don't like to be called out on that. Like if they say it, they're way more likely to do something about it. But if we're going to do this as a family, I may have to kick in a little incentive to get them started. But if they're now doing something, even if I had to bribe them to start, if they're doing something that's going to be beneficial for them in the long run, they're probably going to start to see the benefits. And hopefully it will help them work through that.
I love it. This makes me think of a book. I can't remember the exact. It was about the teenage brain, but
are you confessing that you read books too?
This neuroscience guy was explaining how he called bribery, he referred to bribery as incentives.
Incentivizing, yeah.
Incentives. I
it's the
like it
knife.
better than bribery.
Yeah.
Most parents are pretty good at it though, because you've been bribing your kids since they were, I don't know, 6 months old, a year,
maybe younger.
Your incentive program
serious,
started early.
You're incentivizing the kid to stop crying by changing their diaper. You stick a bottle in their mouth to incentivize them to stop crying. I think we incentivize our kids from the day they're born.
Right. So I like framing this that way. I mean, this also is describing the whole stop parenting, start coaching approach too.
Yeah. And it's a great approach. And it's an interesting territory to get into when you start talking about, providing the external motivation to do something. Because if it becomes about the external motivation, then you can have some problems. And there's all sorts of research on how, especially in like business, how the external motives can cause some issues with long-term motivation. But if you can get them, and this was the point in the book that I was reading, if you can get them to do something that's going to be beneficial for them, you just need to incentivize them long enough where they can see the benefits for themselves. And then they start to become more intrinsically motivated to turn in that phone because they actually enjoy the time away from their phone. They enjoy the time where we called it the island of rest, where they can go to that island of rest and step away from the crazy social drama that they've got going on or all the other things that are there.
I think this is why you see kids enjoying outdoor activities so much when their phones are put away.
Well,
because they're totally freed up from all of that.
It might be one of the low-key, never gets talked about benefits of these performing teens that the parents that listen to this podcast have. Is part of the reason they might like doing this is when they're competing, they're not on their phones. They're out there. And the more they compete, the less time they spend on their phone, the more they have these authentic connections. And I think that that's a big draw to a lot of these kids, and they might not realize it, but they want and crave that authentic connection. So you might have to bribe them a little bit. Those kids that are reluctant to start, you might have to bribe them a little bit on the front end. But if you get them to do that, they'll start to see the benefits, and you're helping them do something they want to do. Like that's my anecdotal research with my students I've had over the last 10 years in doing this class and talking about psychology and how these things impact them. They want to be off their phone. They just need a reason.
Right. And I think if you incentivize it you could be 100% honest about your incentive or your bribe and frame it as let's participate in this experiment and see how it goes.
Yep. And like any good psychology experiment, there's some rewards for the participants of the experiment. So I love that you brought this back up. I don't think it's a bad distraction at all, because I think it sets a good tone for going back to our original question of, will ours stand the test of time? These relationships that we're building, and we want them to be secure long-term. And I think going through something like, working through getting your kids on board with putting their phones away during mealtime, that can be great for setting a better foundation for a long-term relationship.
Yeah, I think we sometimes just think that I know I thought this way somewhat, that when you're done with your teens, you're done, and then they become adults. In the book, in The Good Life, it talks about how you as a parent continue to change as you get older and you move into middle age and
isn't that the fun of life? Like developing over time. That's part of what makes life fun. Like I've grown more between 40 and 50 than I did between 30 and 40. And it's great.
Are you going to start talking about neuroplasticity?
Yeah, because it's cool and stuff. And here's where I wish kids would understand the real power that they have. This, if I could go back in a time machine and smack myself as a 12-year-old, I would make sure that I understand this concept of neuroplasticity, because as an adult, my brain can change, but it changes less readily than the brain of a teenager does. Like when you're 12 to 20, your brain is like hot-wired to change and adapt and grow. And it does it so well.
The prefrontal cortex is undergoing a massive transformation.
Yeah. And that process of pruning that goes on through there is that's going on at the time. So, you and I, we can change. We experience this neuroplasticity and it's awesome. But it does happen a little bit slower for us. So the teens, they get the advantage there. They can really learn and grow and change fast if they capture that. I wish I knew that when I was younger. Take that for what it's worth. But we can still
as well. Well, I mean, there's some prevailing thought out there that says that you can't change, which drives us nuts.
It drives me beyond nuts. Like if you think people can't change is hard. Some people have a harder time with change than others, but man,
it's harder for me to try to fathom the fact that you can't change.
Yeah. Because you can't.
Is it really, I don't want to change?
Often that's what it is. I think we do undersell, especially certain types of change can be extremely hard. Getting over addictions, changing things like that, those can be very hard, and they're not.
Yeah, you don't want to discount that.
No, and we're not trying to make light of or downplay anything like that. And habits of the mind can be equally hard to change. Anger can be changing your emotional response to things. Like those are hard changes to make. Like as a coach, one thing that haunts me, anybody's watched me coach, I get pretty worked up. That's a hard change for me to make, because the only time I can work on it is when I'm worked up. Like when I'm not worked up, I'm chill, I'm good. But when I get in those situations where I really, I get the competitive juices get going, it's very hard to make some of those changes. And so the change is slow. But if I am patient with myself and I evaluate and I'm honest and I get good feedback, then I can start to slowly change over time.
I think an important point to make is that obviously as parents, we want great relationships with our teens.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely want to focus on the present. We take a glance in the rearview mirror always, and the past is instructive. The future can be a guidepost for us, but we want to focus on now. But I think if we look ahead and as parents really understand that if this relationship is to stand the test of time, I've got to go to work right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be so much easier than repairing something later. And I think if you talk to parents of adult children, we're both parents of adult children, that it's probably easier to improve that relationship in the teenage years than later. I may be wrong on that. I'm not sure if there's nerd research on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's easier if you can get on to, because if you go through the teenagers and you have those issues, then you got to go through the process of going back to them and repenting or apologizing and fixing them. And that can be messy and take some time. But if you're quick to say you're sorry, if you're quick to make adjustments, our whole concept of stop parenting, start coaching helps with this, because if you lay the groundwork when they're a teen, that you're going to coach them and help them own their own journey, when they become your adult children, now that's the pattern you've set. Their adaptation was, oh, my mom and my dad, they're not going to tell me exactly what to do. They're going to help me create solutions. They're going to help me think things through. They're going to help me come up with ideas on my own. And if that's the pattern you've set, now in their 20s, 30s, 40s, throughout their life, as long as you're around together, your relationship will stand the test of time because you're not ever telling them what to do. They know that you trust them, or they know that you trust them to make good decisions based on good information.
Do you think it's good for parents to lay this out on the table? Just little plug for more mealtime there. And let their teens know that I really desire a lifelong relationship that is sound, that is great. Because you're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to make mistakes as you're trying to develop this relationship.
Uh-huh.
But if you let the teen know that, hey, this is my end goal, is I want to have a great relationship with you, and I'm working on it. I'm not always making all the right calls and decisions here as I try to parent and coach you. You're thinking. You're scratching your chin.
I couldn't quote you chapter and verse on this, but I think that most of the time you don't tell them that's what you're doing, but you know that's what you're doing. I'm not going to tell you every move I'm going to make, but I know that I want to have a great long-term relationship. And so that's what I'm always going to build towards. The one time that I think you might want to play that card is in the apology mode. When you screw something up, it's a great opportunity to go back to them at that time and say, hey, what I said, what I did, how I reacted there, that's not how I want to show up, because I want us to have a great long-term relationship. And when I do that, I feel like I'm letting you down and not setting the standard for a great long-term relationship. Can you forgive me for that?
I like that. Perhaps that's why I was subconsciously spewing out the fact that I'm trying, this is what I want, and I'm making mistakes. So I see that connection there.
I think
would
that's
be a great time to do
bring it up. But I don't think you tell them about it a lot. It would not, that's one of those show me, don't tell me kind of things. You want to have a great long-term relationship with me? Show me you want to. Deep thoughts by Jack Handy.
No, I hope our listeners are thinking.
Good. We love making people think about that. And hey, these are the most important relationships in your life. I mean, parents, you work really, really hard. We don't talk about it enough on the show. You definitely don't think about it enough in your life. You care so much about these kids, and you pour so much of your heart and your soul and your energy into them. Give yourself credit for the things you're doing well. Create intention about doing even better, and then go do better.
You know what that sound is, Nate?
My burrito's done?
No, that's Creation Corner. That's Creation Corner. We haven't done one for a while.
I'm hungry. I think
this is a good point. Well, hey, if you're going to go get a burrito, I want you to make sure that there's a family member enjoying it with you.
Oh, okay. My daughter likes burritos.
Yeah, more mealtime together. But I think this is a good place to wrap up for a Creation Corner, and that is, if parents just ask the original question, will yours stand the test of time? Maybe if we just tweak the question, how will this relationship stand the test of time? So before you're about to make a decision, before you're about to have a conversation, if you can tuck that one in your back pocket, how can I make this relationship stand the test of time? I think we'll make better decisions as parents. I think our conversations will be more meaningful and more powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Very well said.
And then we get that long-term success. Okay. I think we should sign off by you displaying your t-shirt. It's one of I always love it when you display that one.
Sorry, it's hiding behind the mic. There we go.
I like it better than mine, but I still like mine. I think breathing's important.
Oh gosh, yes.
So I encourage you, myself, all of our listeners to continue doing that until we meet in episode 53, where we're going to wrap this up.
Episode 1 of year 2.
That's true.
Yeah, this was our 1-year anniversary.
Awesome.
That's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool. Have a great week and have a few good runs in between.
And thanks for being with us for a year. Some of you have been like super loyal listeners, and we love having you here with us. So thank you.
We will try to get better.
On behalf of Steve Galley, I'm Nate Crandall, and we thank you, our loyal listeners, for tuning into this episode. If you love what you're learning from the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast, we would appreciate it very much if you would leave us a 5-star review and some glowing comments. We also encourage you to share this episode with your friends and family who are parents of athletes and performers. And if you want to explore further and see what Steve and I are creating to help thousands of parents, athletes, and performers, please visit our company's website at createtransformbecome.com. That's createtransformbecome, all one word, .com. There you will find a growing number of resources to help you elevate your performance. Thank you again for your support, and we encourage you to create a magical relationship with your athlete and performer.